I want to let you into a little Cyclist Magazine secret. We used to film our rides on action cams to put out on our YouTube channel, but it just never worked. As epic as the rides were, the footage that we got back was just so flat and boring. So I'd kind of given up filming rides until a few years ago when someone showed me an Insta360 camera, and it totally blew my mind. The movie it made had zooms, pans, reverse angles, selfies 1 second, rushing cliffs and tarmac the next. It was all from this tiny camera. Now, Insta360's newest edition, the Insta360 X5, takes all of that to the next level. It's the same concept. You've got two cameras. There's one on the front, there's one on the back, and they film in a 200-degree wide arc, and then the camera stitches those two halves together to create a seamless 360 degrees of 8K resolution footage. You can then choose any camera angle you want at any given time to make a movie that genuinely looks like it's been made by a film crew with a drone. You can even capture stuff you didn't see at the time and put that in later. So that pro rider who whizzed past you, or your mate's pain face when you dusted them on a climb, stick that all in afterwards. But, I'm not going to lie, editing can be difficult and the original cameras were overwhelming. But the X5's editing process has been super simplified using AI. So you can create Ridley Scott level movies on your phone over post-ride beers, then share them with your mates then and there. There's loads more. The X5 has incredible low light shooting and motion stabilization control. It's waterproof to 15 meters. It's got lenses that are scratch resistant and also replaceable. The new WindGuard mic system records clearer audio at high speeds. The battery lasts for 3 hours. And there's loads of magnetic mounting accessories for your handlebars, your helmet, body, selfie stick. I could go on and on. This thing is just insane. So head on over to insta360.com, and when you've been seduced by the X5's possibilities, head to the checkout and type in cyclist, where the first 30 purchases will receive a free handlebar mount. Honestly, trust me, your grandkids or your long-suffering partner will thank you, because finally your road rides will look epic. Welcome back to the Cyclist Magazine Podcast. I am your host, James Spender, and I am flying solo this episode. Don't worry, Will is absolutely fine. It's just for this episode, I took myself up to London, the capital, to interview none other than Sir Bradley Wiggins and Sir Ian Botham. And you might be thinking, hang on a second, this is a cycling podcast. What's a cricket player doing on it? Well, this is the 40th anniversary year of Ian Botham's first big charity fundraising event, where he walked from John O'Groats to Land's End, which is 900 miles, and he raised £1 million for leukemia. And since then, Ian hasn't stopped raising money. And this year, he's drafting in Bradley Wiggins to help him on a ride that's going to take place on the 15th and 16th of September, starting from Portsmouth, which is my hometown. I thoroughly recommend it. Lovely little place. And ending in Lords, or at Lords, I should say, at Lords Cricket Ground. And it's all in the name of charity. As I say, Bradley's going to ride. Ian's going to ride, and you too can ride. There are a select few tickets left, I believe, starting, I think, at around about £150 to get on those rides for those 2 days. And then there's also opportunities to sit down at the end of day one and have a Q&A with Ian and Brad, interviewing each other, and also ask some questions yourself. And then at the end of the ride on day two, there will be a sit-down dinner in the Lords Long Room at Lords Cricket Ground. And you can find out more information at bfeesfoundation.org. Keep tuned for the interview coming up, where we talk about the ride, we talk about Ian's amazing charity endeavours, but we also compare and contrast a life playing cricket in the 1980s for Ian versus Bradley's life, much more monastic, I think is probably fair to say, on two wheels. That obviously the zenith of that was 2012, that amazing year for British cycling. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Ian Botham and Bradley Wiggins to the show. Have you guys sat down and worked out what you're going to do? Because you're going to do a Q&A together and spend a bit of time together for the Beefies Foundation charity. And part of that is going to be a night where you guys presumably chat, reminisce, compare stories?
I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm sure it will happen. Whether it's actually formally or it just happens round the bar having a beer or whatever, at the end of the day, there's every chance that people will, conversations will happen, that's for sure. We'll find out. And also, I mean, some of these guys are going to be pretty knackered at the end of the, they haven't got my motor. Anyway.
Because I was thinking about both of you guys, and like so many similarities spring to mind. 2 Knights of the Realm. I've never said that before, sat here. Sports Personality of the Year, probably the most important accolade.
What year were you Sports Personality?
81.
81, yeah.
2012. So both in your, and they were your seminal years, right? 2012, 1981 Ashes.
It was either 80, I think it was 81. But I missed out on 3 in a row, but I'd been second, I think, and third.
Yeah.
In 86, and not all in that same 3 years, but over the...
Were you squeezed out by one of those campaigns which was the horse rider where they just got the whole of the horse riding community to AP McCoy maybe or something?
Well, he deserved it. I mean, anyone sits
he
on
probably
those things over those fences. Good luck. I don't think there's many bones in his body he hasn't broken.
I bet.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just talking about that. And there's another point of comparison. So Ian is full of metal, ceramic, titanium, been rebuilt over and over again, and Brad, I'm guessing you've got.
I'm all right, actually.
Really?
No. I have got a plate in my shoulder from the Tour de France 2011, but other than that, the one thing I did have when I retired, I had mild osteoporosis. I had the bone density of a 65-year-old woman.
Wow!
From a non-weight bearing sport since childhood.
Yeah.
And the impact that has on, and obviously such low body fat and stuff at times.
Yeah.
It's not healthy.
Yeah. How did that sort of like manifest, or more to the point, how do you treat it? Do you just
well, I was part of a study from Liverpool, John Moore afterwards, which we see that by doing weight bearing sports and things like that, and an increase in collagen intake and all that, to see if you can improve your bone density, which we did.
Yeah.
But it's something to maybe that young athletes can adopt if you're in things like swimming and where it's your bones are growing and stuff.
Yeah. So think about that then, training. What was a classic sort of training session in the 80s as a cricket player versus a classic training session in the lead up to 2012 Tour de France?
Well, from my point of view, we didn't really train because we played every day.
Right, okay.
So we used to play not like the guys now. We would start a game on a Saturday.
Yeah. So
you could be at Taunton. And then on Sunday, we could be playing at Scarborough in a Sunday league game. So you drive overnight for a 40 over game, and then come all the way back and start and finish the first class game Monday, Tuesday. And then if they were on a Wednesday, more often than not, once the season got going, Bradley mentioned just now, there's the NatWest series, Benson and Hedges, we had all these series. So they were played on the Wednesday. And then if you weren't playing you might be getting a call up for England.
Yeah.
So you really didn't have time. You didn't need to train. You rehab. Now, that was a different story because when you pick up the injuries, I had a few not too many. I was pretty lucky. But that's the only time really we did any sort of gym work was rehab. And that's when I walk past the gym now and I see guys in there, I'm thinking, it's got to be rehab. You wouldn't go in there for your own choice. It's got to be rehab. There's no other reason to go.
Yeah, I mean, before the Tour de France, it could be anything from 4 hours to 7 hours a day on the bike.
Yeah.
And specific stuff, whether it's climbing but a lot of the time pre-Tour de France, you're coming off big blocks of racing or training at altitude. So a lot of the time you're just recovering. And you go through different phases, obviously overload and recovery. And a lot of our work was done at altitude. And a lot of the time we trained harder than we raced. Because of the nature of the terrain over there. And our motto was always, train hard, race easy. So we aim to replicate or do more in training and reach higher numbers and higher data and things like that than we were ever going to be pushed in our racing by our rivals. And that was kind of what we aimed to try and achieve.
Yeah.
It didn't always work out, but that was, adopting that mindset.
Yeah.
We're going to train harder than anyone could push us in racing.
Where would you do the high altitude? In Europe?
Tenerife.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
So Tenerife on Mount Taylor. We would live at the top of the hotel there on top of the 2,200 meters.
Yeah.
Come down the mountain and then go back up it.
Yeah.
Down would be all right.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about coming back up the hill.
When you hear stuff like that, Ian, does that sort of blow your mind in terms of the culture of cricket when you were playing versus the culture of cycling, which there's a monasticness, isn't there, to cycling? It's like you just have bread, water, and a hotel at 3,000 meters, and you just ride, and you try and get down to like 4% body fat, and that's how you win the Tour de France. Whereas you play loads of cricket, but cricketers, as far as I sort of grew up knowing, had a lot of fun off the pitch, which it doesn't really off the field. Which
we had a similar motto. You play hard, you work hard.
Yeah,
and that's the way it was. And you didn't get many. You might have a day where we batted the whole day out, and I haven't had the bowl that day. But that's good for me.
Yeah,
because that just lets the body have a recovery from bowling. Because bowling's not a normal thing to do. You run into the crease, then you throw yourself sideways, and then you have to get off the pitch straight away. So the pressure that was put onto particularly for a right arm bowler, the left knee, which is the one I had to have replaced.
That's the titanium one, now, is it?
Yeah. Freddie had the same, didn't he? Freddie's knees went.
No, ankle, he was more.
Ankles,
He had a chronic ankle and suffered with it for, on and off for probably the last 3 or 4 years of his career. Yeah, but I mean, he's had worse things to deal with though since. But horrendous. I mean, he's so lucky to be alive.
Yeah,
and he spent 6 months in his own home, didn't go out. Partly, I think, was because of the skin grafts and the sun and what have you. And I think probably that had something to do with it. But he must have seen the whole world go past him, upside down and dragged down a runway, face down.
You kind of think like, I mean, this is a tangent, but just that story, like the BBC, and was it BBC producing it? But Richard Hammond 1.0, and then the idea that this might happen again. It's absolute bananas, isn't it? In this day and age where health and safety is rife, and you just think of people suing people, and I don't know, it's just incredible.
Well, there's another way of doing it, and don't do it.
Yeah.
That's But no, I think health and safety's okay to a point.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to express yourself, and sportsmen do that in many different ways. Next thing they'll be putting restrictions and coming down that mountain because you'll be going too fast or something like that.
Well, they've done it in Paris-Roubaix, haven't they? The entrance to Arenberg.
It's now changed to make it slower.
Put chicane in to slow the race down but that was part of the thrill of the race.
Yeah,
is getting through Arenberg at 65k an hour.
Yeah. Well, that's something I'd like to come to in a bit. Is kind of like how you guys see sport now. Is it too sanitized? But park that one for the moment. Back onto the injuries, what stuck out to me, Ian, is obviously you've done all of these walks for charity. So 18, I think, and counting, as in like very, very, 18, very long walks.
Yeah, a lot.
The first one, 900 miles, John O'Groats to Land's End. And that was in the middle of your career. What did your team, your managers, your chairman say to you when you said, I'm going to do this? A, it's going to take quite a long time. B, walking is pretty taxing because your joints are doing this thing over and over again. You're loading them. And as you just said, cricket is already taking its toll. Cricket is hard.
No, cricket was easy in comparison to the actual walking, because everyone thinks, you're walking on the tarmac, flat road. There's no such thing as a flat road. Like, the camber goes one way or the other. So one day it's the left knee that's, or the left side of the body that's copping it. And then, the next time, you might cross over on a dual carriageway or whatever. And so you're out of balance almost, so you have to adjust. And we were walking at 5 miles an hour, just under, and we were doing on average 28 miles a day, something like that, and doing it. We did it was 900 and odd miles. I can't remember the 50 or whatever it was, but we did that in 33 days. Mm-hmm. So there's no stopping. That's going, that's pushing it. But that's the way to do it, because if you had days off, then you've got to restart, and you got to get back into the pattern. Yeah, we didn't have any days off. We just did the whole walk and kept going. Had great support from the public, which keeps you going as well. Yeah. I think in Bristol, they estimated 40,000 on the streets of Bristol as they went through, which is phenomenal. And they were all very generous, and that's how we collected the money. The very first walk, we had people with buckets running up and down the lines, so the police would stop the cars 300 yards before we got there, behind the lead car. So we had 2 teams of collectors. One would be up that side, and the other ones would be this side.
What year was that?
86. We did the first one.
You couldn't do that now. No one has any cash on them, do they?
Exactly. Yeah, you have to have a little
card machine.
Yeah. So everything went to buckets.
It's funny, isn't it? Because people used to have cash in their car, didn't they? Like coin holders.
Yeah. Well, now you're not allowed to have cash out.
Yeah.
But no, they were brilliant. They were hijacking the cars, and the public were brilliant. We hardly had anyone complain about being held up. Once they realised what it was all about and what it was for, they went with the flow. And those guys, they were the fittest ones.
Yeah,
running up and down, up and down, up and down all day long. Because the police were brilliant. But again, health and safety wouldn't allow that now.
Yeah. So fast forward now, and Beefy's Foundation charity foundation. Which way around? Correct me. Charity foundation. You've got 4 organisations or charities under your sort of umbrella. Talk me through those and tell me how that linked to that first big money raising venture in 1986.
Well, the first walk was the stepping stone, I suppose, but we were very successful there, and we had built the research centre outside Glasgow, and where, to give you an idea why we kept going, there was a 20% chance of survival when we first, for kids with the most common form of leukemia. We were able to announce just a couple of years ago that they had gone from 20% to 94, 95%.
Really?
And that is down to the research and all the money that goes in. So when I hear people saying we don't give money to research, and I'm thinking, why? With no research, nothing's resolved.
Yeah.
So that used to be a bit of a bugbear for me. But people seen what we've done, seen what we've achieved. So we were in a position then that we could spread our wings a little bit. So Batten's disease, which is horrendous, it's where children just basically shut down. They're perfectly normal. Some are come out of the womb with Batten's disease, but it seems to be a gene that actually gets to them as they go on. And any age, we met a lad up in that home, and the boys befriended him. And over a period of time, his eyesight was going, then it was gone. His body, it's been slowing down. There's no cure. And one of the quotes from one of the certain people to look after who gets what for charities said there's no point because there's not enough people with it. And I thought, well, hang on, a ridiculous statement. But no, we had that, and then we did obviously leukemia research, Batten disease. We did my wife very much in the Yorkshire brain tumour, and I always misforget one. Type 1 diabetes, which of course my daughter's got, that younger daughter. Thank you for that. I needed a nudge. But so we've been able to expand and help those. We've also, if we get a one-off case, we had one a few years ago with Belfast with a incubator for very small children, and we helped out there with the incubator. So there are other ways of doing it. We can, nowadays we're not doing the walks, obviously, because I don't think we'll be allowed to, first and foremost. But we still do the golf days and dinners and other functions. So we keep the ball rolling. Yeah.
And now, obviously, you're doing the cycling challenge, which, Brad, you're going to be riding. There's going to be lots of split into groups, I think. So you're going to be going through groups of about 10 riders, hanging out, chatting with them. So you're going to probably have to tell the same story over and over again. So sorry about that, because I'm going to ask you all those questions too. When is that? September 15th, 16th, I think. Yeah. And that's going from Portsmouth to Lords, right? As in Lords Cricket Ground. Correct, yeah. Looking forward to it?
I am, yeah. I mean, I think we were in contact a year ago or so about the possibility of doing something like this. And at that point, I had no intention of ever swinging my leg over a bike again. But so much has changed in the last year for me. And there was talk of me doing 5-10K of this ride. And I said, I'd quite happy to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's been part of my sort of journey in terms of getting back on a bike is doing it for great causes like this. So I'm really looking forward to it. And it's going to be an honour riding with you, Ian. And I think there's going to be it's going to be a bit of a story we can all tell when we get to Lords, really. And it's a bit of a pilgrimage for me going back to where I grew up. I grew up in sort of South Kilburn there, and used to hang around St John's Wood and washing cars and standing outside Gary Lineker's house and going in Lords, and it was my local area. Yeah. And I started riding around Regent's Park when I was a kid, around the outer circle there. And
you never felt like jumping back in there and getting the KOM, because that's like the most Strava.
Well, no. I mean, Britain, I did see a video last week on Instagram of someone getting their bike nicked off the,
yeah.
and they come along on mopeds now, push you off the road, take your bike and drive off with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because obviously
bonkers.
the value of bikes now.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking about that. Ian was blown away.
Yeah.
So I'll give you this actually.
Yeah.
This is issue 1 of Cyclist, and there's a post-it note in there because that is a story that we ran on you. It's 2012 when we launched.
Yeah. Was I involved in the story, or did you just write it on me?
So Jeremy Whittle.
Jeremy,
Jeremy wrote it. So he had been following you, for a long time. So it was made up of his experiences being in and around you.
It's funny, we never used to get on, me and Jeremy, but we've made friends the last year.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Why did you not like him?
I don't like journalists. I didn't think they knew what they. I didn't think if anyone hadn't ridden a bike, then they're not in a position to commentate on what we were doing.
Yeah,
and that was just my attitude, maybe wrongly so. But since I've retired and I've sort of let go of the kind of ego and that anger towards anyone who criticised me on a bike, and I quite like Jeremy now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an interesting point in itself. Your guys' experiences with the media, because something else, along with being Knights of the Realm, Spotty, Personalities of the Year, doing this charity fundraiser ride, you guys also had lots of notoriety away from being the performance athletes that you were. And I would say from just an armchair perspective, you brought personality into sports, which didn't necessarily have personalities like yourselves. Cycling, very Eurocentric, i.e. mainland Europe, French-centric, pretty straight-laced. English wasn't its first language. And then cricket, again, cricket is a sport that I know is probably more taught in different types of settings now, schools-wise, and was once upon a time much more ubiquitous in Britain. But I'd again suggest there's like a kind of slight well-to-do-ness about cricket historically, and with you playing in and your kind of generation, there was, and I hope this doesn't sound unkind, there was a kind of laddishness about it. There was a fun element to it, and you were a personality. You shone a light on your sport as much as your sport shone a light on you.
Look, at the end of the day, it's our theatre.
Yeah.
So you go out there, and if you're having a good time, the people who've come to watch are enjoying it as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing. I think, to me, you're an entertainer. Even if it means ducking West Indian bowlers in the 80s, bowling at 100 miles an hour and whistling past your nose. Even so, that's all part and parcel of the entertainment.
Yeah.
So, I didn't see, I saw us as skilled at what we do, but more importantly, we enjoyed what we did, and we were there for the right reasons. And that was in the 80s, we were a good team.
Yeah.
And we won in Australia in 86, which doesn't happen very often. We beat them in 81. So we had a bit of a run going against Australians, and that's always pleasing. We can get on top of that because they are the competitors of competitors. They're gladiators. But no, I saw it literally. If I was enjoying it and I was doing okay, then I knew the people out there watching who paid are getting their money's worth.
Yeah. And how about you, Brad? Your sort of experience as being a celebrity?
Yeah,
as well as a
I think. Well, one of the things growing up, and the people who I was always attracted to in sport were the flawed personalities, the likes of Paul Gascoigne. In cricket, Shane Warne. And I can always remember the people that it's almost transcended the sport for other reasons, and maybe the wrong reasons, or controversial reasons. I mean, Freddie Flintoff in cricket. Kevin Peterson, them two rolling out of Downing Street when they won the Ashes. But that, I think people like that. In some way, obviously, you get criticised from the media on that, but people do like to see a little bit of themselves in people, and I think that's what Paul Gascoigne and people like that. It's that entertainment level. I mean, the boxing match last week, the Ben Eubank thing. Who came away from that? Who's all over the media, social media this week? Is Chris Eubank, his father, because of the personality, the entertainer that he is. And ultimately, that's what I found inspirational in sport, is wanting to be like people like that. And now that you were asking before, how do I see sport now, particularly cycling, is so sanitized and elite, and the brutality of elite sport is great. But these people, it's just there's no personalities in it anymore. The whole drinking culture has gone out of sport. But in the 80s, growing up, like the England cricket, the England football team, and people like Gascoigne, there was a drinking culture around. I used to go and watch Arsenal as a kid, and Tony Adams. And I'm not saying that is, obviously sports cleaned itself up massively, and then there's an inspirational piece in that. But the elitism of sport now is kind of making the distance between the general public and the elite sportsman so big.
Yeah.
There's there's such a void between them people, and people see these people now, and almost in some cases can never aspire, to be that good at something. And there was something about sport when Ian was playing and growing up in the 80s and the early 90s that made you think you could do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, those sort of athletes are very far, few and far between now.
So how did you, sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, just adding on to that, I learnt more about international cricket at the end of the day's play.
Right.
Because what would happen is if we've been Australia with very much the same level that we were at, and in the way we thought about the game. So you play it hard on the field. You've been out in the field all day. You come in, you get your wet gear off, you sit down. The Aussies would walk in with a slab of beer, whatever, and we'd all sit down, have a couple of beers, and discuss. And when I was my first 15, 20 tests, I did mostly listening. And listening to what the greats, the people like the Dennis Lillys of this world, the Greg Chappells, these Jeff Thompson, these great cricketers, and to actually listen to them, you actually just sit back, absorb what you can, and then by about the 25th Test match, I was starting to, then you sort of went up a peg.
Yeah.
Did you ever play with Brian Lara?
Yeah, I played against Brian, and Sachin Tendulkar.
I watched him at Lord's once. He was in a Test match. Phenomenal.
I played more golf with Brian.
Did you?
Yeah, than I did.
Who wins?
Well, he plays right-handed, bats left-handed.
Okay.
It's funny. He's another one. When we were kids, we were at PlayStation. There was a Brian Lara cricket game.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Again, Tony Hawk was the same skateboard. There's people like that transcend this sport and bring it to,
Yeah. Do you identify with any of? Is there a version of Aussies coming in with a slab of beer after a cycling race? Is there something like that?
I mean, the Aussies are that is a stereotape of Australian sportsmen. I always said that they're the worst winners in the world and the worst losers.
But when you think this, it's only 24 million of them on that vast continent.
That's the problem. They're on their own little island, and nothing exists outside of Australia.
But you look at their record in sport. It's quite phenomenal.
Yeah, it is phenomenal.
Men and women.
Yeah.
And it's you look at cricket, you look at hockey, you look at rugby, just go through it. And the amount for that population, they turn over more medals than any other country.
Yeah.
Great effort. They are, but I suppose they've got great facilities.
Well, they're ultimately from Britain, aren't they? They're all convicts, weren't they? Sent them there.
Well, they're all flawed athletes, right? They're all flawed individuals. I mean, I'm saying this obviously tongue in cheek, but yeah.
Are you?
But was there a camaraderie with rival teams, with other riders? Did you go and mix in a hotel bar?
Yeah, but no, not really. No, no.
Kept yourselves to yourselves.
Yeah. There'll be a language barrier as well when they agree.
But then you would speak. I mean, by a few years in, you're speaking like good enough. I don't know, Spanish or French to sort of to talk to people, aren't you?
Yeah,
yeah. So less of the language thing.
It's funny, people tend to I mean, there's people I speak to now regularly and I'm friends with them that I spoke to for 20 years while racing. Well, you retire and then people let their guard down, their ego down, and then suddenly you think, actually, you're not, I always thought you were, and that happens a lot.
So who's a Jeremy Whittle, but of the pro peloton, where you've kind of connected with them afterwards?
Don't know, Johan Brunel.
Oh, yeah,
the manager. I never really spoke to him when he was the manager of US Postal. Lance Armstrong,
yeah. Is that through the Armstrong connection with the podcast?
No, I got in contact. Well, we made friends when I retired, actually, over the history of cycling. He's a jersey collector. Yeah. And we found a common ground, sort of common interest.
Yeah. Who would you, to give some context to Ian, who would you parallel him to as a sort of football manager? Would he be like a Brian Clough or he's not really a Fergie?
No, I don't.
He's too maverick.
Jose Mourinho, I would say.
Jose Mourinho.
Young Jose, Chelsea season, first season at Chelsea.
Yeah. So did you feel then, with the personality that you were, that you fitted into something like Team Sky? So I chatted to Fran Miller on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she said that one of the things that her and Dave Brailsford, I say her as in the team together, she ended up being the head of winning behaviours department. They had that in their Team Sky kind of marginal gains arsenal.
Load of crap.
Can you explain to me what that means?
Yeah, I can't even explain to you. I was there.
So, go on.
I don't know what it meant.
Can you remember when they sort of introduced
I remember all that sort of crap they come out with. I mean, it's the same thing. Dave Brailsford was doing the same now at Manchester United, Project 21 or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
He's a bluffer.
Yeah.
Complete.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I again, I don't know how any of that was more maybe for the staff, the winning behaviours thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I want to let you into a little Cyclist Magazine secret. We used to film our rides on action cams to put out on our YouTube channel, but it just never worked. As epic as the rides were, the footage that we got back was just so flat and boring. So I'd kind of given up filming rides until a few years ago when someone showed me an Insta360 camera, and it totally blew my mind. The movie it made had zooms, pans, reverse angles, selfies 1 second, rushing cliffs and tarmac the next. It was all from this tiny camera. Now, Insta360's newest edition, the Insta360 X5, takes all of that to the next level. It's the same concept. You've got two cameras. There's one on the front, there's one on the back, and they film in a 200-degree wide arc, and then the camera stitches those two halves together to create a seamless 360 degrees of 8K resolution footage. You can then choose any camera angle you want at any given time to make a movie that genuinely looks like it's been made by a film crew with a drone. You can even capture stuff you didn't see at the time and put that in later. So that pro rider who whizzed past you, or your mate's pain face when you dusted them on a climb, stick that all in afterwards. But, I'm not going to lie, editing can be difficult and the original cameras were overwhelming. But the X5's editing process has been super simplified using AI. So you can create Ridley Scott level movies on your phone over post-ride beers, then share them with your mates then and there. There's loads more. The X5 has incredible low light shooting and motion stabilization control. It's waterproof to 15 meters. It's got lenses that are scratch resistant and also replaceable. The new WindGuard mic system records clearer audio at high speeds. The battery lasts for 3 hours. And there's loads of magnetic mounting accessories for your handlebars, your helmet, body, selfie stick. I could go on and on. This thing is just insane. So head on over to insta360.com, and when you've been seduced by the X5's possibilities, head to the checkout and type in cyclist, where the first 30 purchases will receive a free handlebar mount. Honestly, trust me, your grandkids or your long-suffering partner will thank you, because finally your road rides will look epic. Ian, you've storied career, loads of amazing achievements, but the thing that most people know you for is Botham's Ashes, 1981. How did you feel in that moment, snatching an amazing victory from initial jaws of defeat, but in the process, what seemed to happen in terms of the timeline is you relinquished your captaincy and then came out and played an absolute blinder and slayed the Aussies, and jobs are good and we've won 3-1.
Yeah, and I played in that. 1981 was a pretty tough time for the UK. Mm-hmm. We had the race riots, cities were on fire. Mm-hmm. We had the miners' strike, and there was a lot of things that shouldn't be going on were going on. And what we did, not because we knew we were going to do it, but we actually, winning that series and winning it the way we did, lifted the whole country. Yeah. And it was great. And we didn't really realize that until you sit back and look at it a few years later. And I don't think sportsmen do. I think that's when you sit down in the armchair with the grandchildren, that's when you start to remember all those great times. At the time, it's just you're doing your job, but we were doing it and enjoying it. I always like to put make people eat their own words, and there were on a couple of occasions there that I enjoyed it very much. But it was collectively a very good team. I mean, Bob Willis performed brilliantly at Headingley. Everyone forgets that he bowled 15.4 overs, I think it was, and took 8 for 43. And it should have been 2 man of the matches. But that doesn't.
Was he young Gladstone Small in that team?
No, he would have been after. He was more Freddie's time and there. Yeah, but no, Gladdy. But yeah, it was a great series for us, and the crowds love it. And we then took 5. I took 5 weeks for 1 run at the next game at Edgbaston, and then got another 100 at Old Trafford. So it was freakish. But, and if you'd have said after the second test, I was lucky. I think some people wanted me left out the side, but Mike Brealey took over and he rang me and I said, "Yeah, of course I want to play." Yeah, and that was the end of that. So,
what if you cast your mind back now, you are a man who can sit in an armchair and tell the grandkids about this stuff. What was the turning point in those matches where you thought this is going to go our way or my way, and you just almost like a kind of epiphany of sorts?
I don't think you think that way. At the end of the day, one of the great things about team sport is if you don't enjoy someone else in your team's what they've achieved, and you've had a poor game, but he's had a great game, and it goes around, and that's so important in the dressing room, and we had that. We had it in '86 as well, where we had young players mixing with some senior players. So what we did in '86 was we I had Phil de Freitas, and he roomed with me. And then, so you want single rooms, everyone was rooming. And the idea of that was so that a little bit can rub off on the younger players. Yeah. And it certainly worked because Phil de Freitas had a great series for a guy that had never bowled a ball over there in anger. So, bonding, understanding each other, tolerating each other, and enjoying each other's adventure. And that's exactly what we did in that series. And through the 80s. Yeah. We had some great individuals, but at the end of the day, we were a team, and that's important.
Is that something that rings true for you as well, Brad?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, at times in cycling, it's very much an individual sport. You've got to, your team can only deliver you to a point, like at the bottom of a mountain, and you've got to then do the rest of it. But you couldn't do it without those people. It's a strategy, and you don't all have to get on at times as well. I think that's the misconception. You don't have to be one big happy family. Yeah. Some of the best teams I've been in have been some of the most dysfunctional in many ways. Yeah, been part of. But sometimes it's quite good to have that, because you're all wanting to win and sort of aiming for the same thing.
Yeah, just looking back at some of the teams you've been in, FDJ, Credit Agricole, Cofidis, French through and through. Yeah. How much did they fit that?
Well, they were very sort of old-fashioned and traditions, what we'd always done. Yeah. And this was before the new age cycling teams like Garmin and the team Trek and Sky and the new way of thinking and thinking outside the box and doing everything against what's always been done. And the French teams are stuck in their ways, which has been reflective in their results for many years. I think there was the beginning of the change since American and the UK teams came in.
Did you guys in your careers have people that helped you with the psychology of it? I was just thinking as you're talking about those Ashes, there's so many moments where you could make a mistake and it's just one mistake and you're out, you're gone. How do you prevent that kind of cognitive overload? And it's something that I've heard probably more from in sport from snooker players. Someone like Ronnie O'Sullivan will talk about, going into a kind of flow state to do these mega 147s. Did you have someone that kind of coached you and said, here's how you handle pressure?
Pressure makes kettles whistle. If you want to be at the top of the sport and competing with the best, you've got to be in the kitchen in the hottest spot. Pressure. Seriously, I know that I knew guys who I played with and they had problems. Yeah. But I had a saying, and I've had it all the way through my career and even now. And I always said people said, I ride the torpedo to the end of the tube. And what I'm saying is I'm going that way forward. And yes, what you leave behind, but you can learn from that, but you've got to keep going forward. And that was simply the way I did it. A bad day, so be it. You can't do it every day. So I never had any of those problems. But I know I played with players that did have problems. And we had a captain as well, Mike Brealey, who was too bright to be a cricketer, really. But he was fantastic. And any of the guys, he could always have a chat with Breers that you go to him as a captain. Yeah. But no, pressure, I thrived on it. The more pressure, the more I wanted to do it.
Yeah. And Brad?
Well, when we had Steve Peters, didn't we? Who's looked after Steven Gerrard, and I battled with him. I could never understand that whole concept of the chimp. There's part of your brain that's a chimp, and that's your chimp talking to you. And I could never get that model. And I think through pushing back on that and trying to be brainwashed with that, I developed my own kind of way of dealing with things, really. And as Ian says, ultimately my best performances were when I was under the most pressure. And I think it's a combination of being in the right place at the right time with your condition and the physical condition and the results and the run of the road and things like that, and being in the right position at the right time. And then, dealing with that moment really. And I think I developed ways, particularly in time trialing, of a routine and a process I would go through in order to focus on what I had to focus on and not worry about or put down the gremlins coming into this chimp in my head that was talking to me.
Yeah.
And I think I developed my own technique of doing that at the best times. But then I would have off days and I would, crumble or whatever, or, if that's the right word. And those are the times really where I didn't have the form. The condition wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when I was in the best shape, I would win.
And would you know that about yourself? You'd know today.
I think experience. I mean, the only way you get good at things like that is by failing.
Yeah.
And you have more disappointments than you have good moments. But it's what you learn from those mistakes and your failures, really.
Yeah. It sounds like.
Did Robbie Williams have a chat with you about that film he's just done?
CGI chimp Robbie.
I just wondered if he had anything to do with that. Your man.
No, I don't know if he did. No.
Yeah, it's quite bizarre to us. I've seen it. But, amazing. But it is when you said the chimp and the head. I thought
this whole chimp paradox.
That's chimp paradox. That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, bring Robbie Williams into it. There's someone who shot meteorically high, made loads of money, ostensibly lost a lot of it, if not all of it, and has serious demons now. I think that documentary touches on a lot of those things. How were your guys' experiences after those big moments? So 1981, suddenly all eyes are on Ian Botham. Is that a pleasant feeling? What happens after that for those moments for the rest of the year?
Well, you learn very quickly what you can and can't do.
In terms of where you can go?
I used to like to go down to the local pub and have a beer.
Yeah.
Now, in the village where we lived at that time in Epworth in Lincolnshire, I could do that. But if I went somewhere else, I wouldn't feel happy in there because there's always someone that wants to be bigger, tougher and stronger than you.
Yeah.
And I really don't want all that. So you have to be a little bit careful. Also, children. My children were younger in those days, Sarah, Liam, and Becky came along a bit after. But the school playground is a terrible place.
Yeah.
When things aren't going right. And if you all I was getting slated as captain and what have you, but by an element of the press, not all of it. And
I watched Liam play at Wigan. I used to go to Wigan in the early 2000s.
Well, he went. That was a classic case because he actually went to play at Cardiff for and won a lot of.
Did he cross codes?
He did.
This is your son.
Yeah. He played at Wigan Warriors. I'm a lifetime member of the Wigan Warriors.
Yeah,
so I lived in Wigan for 20 years.
You were going to say you're neck of the woods. But
no,
that's the one that always got me was the children's school car. That's the one I hear terrible stories. Liam had to bop his way out of things. And,
oh man,
yeah, but
which seems odd because you're a hero.
Well, there's a thing called jealousy.
Which comes from the parents.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Kids only learn those things from the parents. My son had it at school. Of course, when I won the Tour de France, the January after I won the Tour de France, Lance Armstrong did Oprah. Of course, then I was the current winner of the Tour, and my son had to go into school, and it's just jealousy, it is. But I think it's certainly, thank God, it's toughened him up as he's 20 now, and is a better person for those experiences.
Yeah. Do you feel like actually? I mean, that's just remind me there, like the fact that the whole Armstrong saga comes out, the months after you've won the Tour de France. How's that for you? Because do you not feel like,
well, you know what,
FNL, come on, this is my moment.
Yeah, and I think
so negative publicity.
I was with Sky, and obviously I had to do all the interviews and things around it, and there was all that I was told what to say. I was told what to say about Lance Armstrong in terms of my opinion and stuff. And I wish, that was one of my main regrets, is I wish I'd just said what I thought. And I think there was a lot of hypocrisy in the media. A lot of the media knew what he was doing, and people were sat there dumbfounded that, really? He took all this stuff? And people knew what was happening. They knew what was happening across the sport, There was a pandemic in the sport in that sense. And years on now, it was hard, because I was representing Sky, and I had to, to say everything that they wanted me to say on that issue. And I wish I'd have been able to have my own voice on that. Because I look back at those interviews now, and it was a tough period for cycling, wasn't it? And it's still an open wound in many ways. What Pogacar's doing now will, whoever's winning the Tour de France will always have to face those line of questioning.
Yeah. I mean, we had Levi Leipheimer on the pod a couple of weeks ago. So this is Armstrong, ex-teammate of Lance Armstrong, who testified as part of the USADA investigation, but eventually convicted him, led to a conviction, and results overturned. Anyway, he strangely doesn't have animosity towards a guy who ostensibly ruined his life in certain ways. Not to say it was just one person, but he doesn't seem to have what you might think, the feelings you might think towards Armstrong or towards Postal or towards cycling, because he just says it's that was what was going on and what was we supposed to do.
I don't think he should. I don't think he has a right to. I think he had a choice.
Yeah.
He's a grown man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I sort of sit here thinking, wonder these people that say Armstrong ruined their life. I mean, grow up.
Yeah. Yeah.
They all had a choice. Who's not been a bit to someone?
Yeah.
And I think it's part of elite sport. Elite sport is brutal at that level.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of hypocrisy around.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to look after you. You've got to look after yourself.
Yeah.
And there's always someone that wants to be looking over the shoulder.
Yeah, and a lot of those cyclists from that generation around Armstrong are all victims of their own choices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who looks after you guys then? And if you think about people that helped you out as much as you have to look after yourselves, who are those? I think you mentioned old captains, someone that you could maybe go to and say, hey, I'm struggling with a decision here. Can you give me some advice?
Biggest cure for me, go fishing.
Go fishing.
I would seriously. I would go up to Scotland. I used to fish around where we lived, but in a couple of weeks' time, I go up to Scotland and I get into the water at the Spey, and I wade down, and there's just me, a 100-yard pool, and I do 2 casts for every stride. So I get down the other end. I'm in beautiful countryside, deer growing across the river, and all this sort of stuff. And I get there, and 2.5 hours have passed, and it feels like 20 minutes. And it's just clearing your head. And that was my great fallback, was to go fishing. And that's why I'm actually quite excited. One of my grandsons and I are going fishing next Saturday, a week tomorrow. And it's great. I mean, he is very dyslexic. And I think it'll be really good for him. Yeah. Because it gives him something else to think about and move on. And he's a very good sportsman. And he's got this bug now for fly fishing. So I am delighted, because I know that won't do him any harm. It can only do him good. Yeah.
What was your release, Brad?
I don't think I've really had one. I think the greatest pleasure I took in each day was actually taking the kids to school. And when I wasn't able to do that, if I was away for weeks on end or a month on end, that would be the thing I missed the most. It's just a simple pleasure of dropping the kids off at school in the morning. Yeah. I've got a 4-year-old, and I do that every day now with her, and it's my best part of my day.
Yeah, as a kid, that's often like the most quality time you spend with your parents for a while, isn't it? Because you go your own way in life, and that's the moment where you've got a captive audience with your child.
Yeah. When we toured Australia or New Zealand or India, wherever, we weren't. Nowadays these guys don't want to warm up games; they want to go straight into it, and they, it's going to do that in Australia. It'll be a little bit like committing suicide, to be honest, down there. You've got to be prepared. And we were away for 4 to 5 months.
Yeah. Really? Without your family?
Well, we weren't allowed to take the families at the early days.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, common sense prevailed, because it did affect a few of the lads. And particularly the ones that weren't playing. Were in the squad but weren't playing.
Yeah.
It's always very difficult, that. And you're away from home. So now you can get your wives out. We did towards the second half of my life in cricket. And everyone feels better. It's a much better atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I think that was quite important.
Was it hard because you both had kids throughout your careers, right? Was that, how difficult was that? It's a silly question. Was it hard? Of course it was hard. But how difficult was it?
But at the same time, that was part of the sacrifice of not having them around, particularly, because you're really focused on what you're doing, And when I came back from the Tour de France in 2012 and I'd won it, obviously, I didn't see the kids for a month or so, and I had to go straight to the Olympics in London. And that the famous story of me walking from the hotel in the morning to the start ramp, and I had to ignore my 5-year-old daughter at the time, who sort of saw me and said, "Daddy," and I had to ignore her, and that broke my heart, as well as hers, But I was going to start the race of my life, in London Time Trial.
Yeah.
but and she still remembers it to this day. And so it's things like that make you realise that kind of what is important. But at the same time, you're there to do a job, and while you're focusing on that job, you can't let the two interact with each other. And that was how I
and hopefully in time that there's a disappointment there for a young girl, but then in time you realise your father is showing you the sacrifices and the focus that you might need to make. And it's also
not something that's going to happen
on a regular basis.
Often, that things like that. Once I started noticing things like that, and I realised, there was only so many birthdays and things I wanted to miss, that was enough for me. I didn't want to go away and win another 5 Tour de France's and be away for months on end. And that was one of the factors that informed me never going back to the Tour de France, is not wanting to be away from the family.
Which is quite astonishing to think that was Britain's greatest moment in cycling, and then it just never was repeated. Well, I mean, obviously not, has been, but
it never probably will be. But I mean, that summer touched people's hearts in so many ways, from various sports, and to have a home Olympics and growing up in London in my pomp of my career was
incredible.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you couldn't go to that local pub anymore? You had to watch where you were, and obviously smartphones were.
I had one sports personality, and I never took the trophy home. I put it at the local pub,
right?
And they chained it to the bar, and people were coming in and out of the Farmer's Arms for months on end to see the trophy, because it's an iconic thing. Bobby Moore and all these people are on it, and this trophy was changed so that it was in the news, and and it was the people that voted for it, so I put it in the pub.
Yeah.
So I could go to that pub, and
you're right.
Where are your trophies, Ian? Any behind any pubs?
No,
pub bars?
Actually, I gave quite a lot of it away. I wasn't one for memorabilia. The family were. They actually put quite a lot of stuff away, and it was up in the loft, and I didn't even know it was there.
If there's one thing you look back and you think, I wonder where that is, or I wish I could have that, because I've got like that now. I've started finding bits again that and I've only recently got my London 2012 Olympic bike. I've got it back in the house, and it was locked away somewhere, and I didn't appreciate it at the time. But as you get older, you think, I wish I still had that. I wonder where that is. Have you got anything like that?
Not really. I mean, when I was at Worcester, if we won a tournament, I would keep it. If we were runners up, I always gave it to the lads who looked after us, dressing room attendants and things like that, as a little memento. So I suppose that says what I am really, and that's I want to win. I don't really want to be
reminded.
So
what about the bat from '81 from the Ashes, something like that? If you had that, imagine the bat.
I saw it the other day.
Oh, you know where it is? Is it the actual one or one of the reps?
No, it's definitely the one, and I know who bought it.
Really?
And it was there. We had a breakfast, and Nigel Ray, a good friend who bought it, he put it on display, and he also had Jeff Hurst's shirt, the original shirt.
No way.
From the '66 World Cup. Jesus. And the two things were on display.
What does this guy do for a living to be able to afford these things?
Nigel's a very successful businessman, and owned Saracens rugby.
Oh, okay.
Sport.
That's incredible.
Yeah, very wonderful guy.
I think, would you sell that bike, that 2012 bike? I think we've got a customer for it. Am I right in saying that bike was Dimitris Katsanis designed?
Yes.
And I
was supposed to give it back.
Yeah. I've heard
they've asked a few times for it.
Really? And you didn't you just put it in the boot of your car and drive home that day?
Yeah. I still got it.
Why?
I love that.
Because of the
it belongs to the.
It was paid for by UK Sport lottery funded money, and the technology on it at that time, they didn't want it to get out there because. But it's dated now. I looked at it the other day. It's got mechanical gears.
Yeah. But as we were talking about earlier, like why do bikes cost so much money?
And everything's electric now.
Yeah. But just the money that went into those things, developing those things from the ground up for the first time around was tens of 50 grand, 100 grand or something for it.
And the rest. That sounds great, but they've got to design a seat that's comfortable. I couldn't go that far on. That's ridiculous. I was saying to James earlier, my bike will be a Miss Marple bike with a nice little wicker basket at the front, soft.
So you're planning on doing the whole ride, are you?
No.
No. Okay, good. We can do it on a tandem if you like.
All right, I'll be at the back.
Yeah. You can be Stoker.
I'll just sit there.
Have you done, over your years, have you done cycling in terms of, I know a lot of people do it for like rehab reasons.
No, well, you do, but it's a static
bike.
So that we do that. But no, as I said to you, I've had too many near misses with some of these guys. My bugbear with cyclists is, why do you jump red lights? Why do you cut in front of me?
Yeah.
And I'm amazed not more people get killed.
Yeah.
And you get hit by a bus, there's not a lot you're going to be left of you. And that's the one thing that I wish the cyclists would just conform with.
Yeah.
Especially in the towns.
Yeah.
That's sticky territory for a cycling podcast, but I do 100%.
Well, I'll say it. I've said it. But that's the truth. That's what that is. It's something I think that needs to be cleaned up, because traffic is not going to get lower; it's going to get higher in volume, and consequently, there becomes a danger. It's accelerated.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I was saying to you about in Australia, if I go out into the bush, so say 300 miles from Melbourne to a function, and I go out there, and once you get over the coast, it's pretty flat, and then suddenly you might not see a car for an hour, but suddenly I'll see a trail of bikes, and I go past them. There's 60, 70 riders.
Yeah, and his helmets are illegal there. You have to wear wear helmets in Australia.
Oh yeah, it's totally compulsory.
Yeah. So, although you don't have your 81 bat and you're not a memorabilia squirrel like Brad, you've got an awful lot of stuff, haven't you?
Yeah.
What memories do you keep and cherish?
They're all up here.
Yeah.
You keep those in your head. It's just not the way. Some people, I played with guys who get everything signed, every test, every game, and they take it home, and they've got these bags full of stuff. I just don't get it. I enjoyed it, and I'm pleased that someone else is enjoying that bat. It's never going to be used. It's certainly looked. I did warn them about make sure there's no woodworm in there, because it's been sitting there for not being used. But and Jeff a shirt. But Jeff's very happy. He didn't see it on display and share it.
Yeah. And Brad, favourite other than the 2012 time trial bike?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I've got things that are more sentimental. Like I've got my dad's European Marathon Champions jersey, which is worthless to other people.
Yeah,
but seeing the relationship I had with him, and then his subsequent murder and stuff, it's something that's dear to me. So things like that, and it's the sentimental stuff, really.
Yeah. How do you think your different family situations, parents influenced you as not just sports people but men as well? Like, how do you feel?
Well, my relationship with my dad made me and nearly killed me. It's such a contradiction. I wouldn't be here today if he hadn't been a professional cyclist. But the role he played as a father was something that's impacted me greatly post cycling when I've had to deal with that. So. Yeah, but we're all products of our childhood and our parents, aren't we? In so many ways, and I think we have. I think you have a responsibility to yourself as you get into your 40s to not let that hinder you anymore. Certainly, it drove me in a professional sense in my career. I think that adversity and that was what was a driving factor to me to get out of bed every morning and train.
Yeah,
but it was also masking and disguising something that when I retired was going to hit me like a brick.
Yeah. And Ian?
My parents made a lot of sacrifices because obviously with cricket and under 15 level.
They both played, did they? Is that right?
My father was a very good soccer player, football player, and but he was in the Navy, captain the Navy side, I believe, and he also played hockey. But his football, one of them Premiership, I think it was Bolton or someone, tried to sign him, but you can imagine a Premiership side coming to you, so I'd like to sign you. My dad turned around and said, no, I've got to do him another year for my pension from the Navy. So that's how things have changed. But he and my mum, a lot of sacrifice, just drive me all over Somerset and then Southwest England, as I went into the Southwest England side. And then we were going up to Liverpool and places. They gave up a hell of a lot for me. But the great thing is I enjoyed the success of my father and my mother, but both sadly not with us anymore. But they enjoyed my success. But my father would always find something that he wasn't quite happy with. So that was my father. But no, it was great. They were good.
Yeah. And once you guys retired from your different sports, did you feel that suddenly you had to reinvent yourself? Or not suddenly, but you rediscovered a different side of yourselves because you put so much into sport and everyone else around you is telling you this is what you are. You're a cyclist, you're a cricket player. And then you're kind of on your own. How was that adjustment?
I mean, I think there's definitely a sort of, I was confused about my identity because I felt I was playing a character, you know, and people want you to be that character a lot. And your whole identity is wrapped up in your whole sporting persona, you know, and what you've achieved. And, you know, so I think the longer I've gone into retirement, I think I get further away from that. But, you know, I will always meet people in the street. Oh, you're the cyclist. And, you know, I remember watching 2012, you know, and it's people remember you how you impacted them the most at a certain era, you know. It's like Ian, I always remember you for the mustache.
Yeah.
Like, Ian, I remember my dad's mate, John, he's now a key cutter in Kilburn. His dad looked like, you know, we used to call him as Ian Botham. You could say your dad's Ian Botham, yeah. Because it was like, it was such a unique look. You had it was quite a rare look for a cricketer at that time, wasn't it?
Well, I like to stir up the authorities.
It was, he was like the George Best of cricket.
So I even had it dyed at one stage.
Well, more similarities because Brad had the Wiggo sideburns.
I know.
You had the moustache.
Yeah.
But
we should have put them together.
Full set.
That's one thing we could do. We could do
a scarecrow in the middle of the field, But no, from my point of view, I finished cricket, and then but I'd already signed to work with Sky, and I did 23 years with Sky, so I was never really away from the game. And now I work in Australia commentating for a radio station, and hopefully with the Ashes, probably Channel 7, do some work with them. So I'm looking forward to this winter because it's going to be massive. You got the Ashes, you got the British Lions playing before that in Australia, and then along comes the cricket. So,
did you ever play against Skull? You know, Skull does the commentary. He's great. He's a great broadcaster, isn't he?
Yeah, and he played at Somerset as
well.
Yeah,
he did. Yeah.
Yeah, Kerry O'Keefe.
Him and Shane Warne, I watched the Aussie cricket sometimes. They're a great combination broadcasters.
Oh, yeah, they were very funny.
Yeah.
What was the worst bit of sledging that you heard? Can it be repeated?
No. No, I never really got sledged, to be honest, because I think you don't poke the bear.
Right.
And so I think they were quite happy to leave me alone and hope I get out. And, you know, but if you started winding me up, then I got more and more determined. And, you know, it didn't always work.
Yeah.
But it's certainly, sledging wasn't really something, I didn't really do it myself. On maybe 2 or 3 occasions, and that would be it.
Yeah.
In a long career. But, and I know people go, oh, yeah. And it's true, you ask my teammates. You know, I didn't really say anything, and no one really said anything to me. One Australian did, but anyway, he got sorted out. But that was all right.
And banter on the bike as well. Was there quite a lot of chat when you're on the long?
Really?
You just head down.
Yeah, most
radio.
of the time. Yeah. A lot of it is because of the proximity of racing against each other. A lot of it's shouting and gesticulating if someone's cut you up and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you're still responsible for the best winning acceptance speech line ever. Now we're going to draw the raffle numbers. How did that go? I feel like I think that
added to the sort of mania, as it were. You know, that was my sort of introvertness way of dealing. You know, trying to be funny or
Was that one of those things? I mean, maybe this is a kind of too novel question to ask, but like, are you thinking I'm going to say that? Or it just pops out your mouth and you're like, oh.
No. That's why I was voted second wittiest man in Britain in 2013, ahead of Noel Gallagher.
Ahead of Noel Gallagher?
Yeah.
And who beat you?
No, I was first.
You were first?
Yeah, he was second. Yeah.
When you're saying about the close proximity in the racing, I often wondered when I've seen someone take out 3 or 4 riders, I just wonder how many of them get up and chin him.
No, that never happens. I mean, most of the time when you go down, you're skinned, aren't you?
That's the other reason.
And normally the person who causes the crash doesn't fall off, do they?
They're away.
Well, there's Stuart O'Grady had a few fisticuffs, did he, after sprints?
No, Robbie McEwen maybe. I mean, that has happened.
Yeah. And famously Bernardino with the French farmers, the protesting French farmers that stopped the dock workers. Yeah.
You want to take on the dock workers,
So finally, guys, because we should wrap this up. From looking back from this wonderful ivory tower that you can now see your younger self, what was the best piece of advice that you got given, and what would you give yourself now if you could talk to 25-year-old Ian Botham in 1981?
Well, the best thing, the thing that really annoys me is when I go along and watch my kids playing, which I do. I love whenever I'm at home. If I get an opportunity, whether it's cricket or rugby or whatever, I'll go along and watch. But what I hate to see are the parents, some of the parents on the touchline trying to relive their life through those kids out there and shouting at them and whatever. Children, let's be fair, if you're in the under 11s, under 9s, whatever, encourage them to enjoy. And that's what my first thing is. It's like, if you hit the ball hard, we'll worry about the technique later, but keep hitting it out the ground. So you can sharpen up on things, but let the kids expand in their own way. And some kids don't want to play sport. And you've got to accept that as well.
Yeah.
But no, I just see some of these kids now and I see the parents and I'm thinking, do me a favor, shut up. Just let the kid get on with it.
Yeah.
If you're so good, let's see what you can do.
Yeah. And Brad, advice for younger
just
self?
Enjoy it while it lasts. It's over in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I think when you're 25 or something, you think you're going to have years ahead of you, and it's just. And I tell you what, retirement goes even quicker.
Yeah.
I'm nearly 10 years retired now. I think, God, what's happened in the last 10 years?
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd have probably told my younger self: not everyone who helps you is your friend, and not everyone who hurts you is your enemy. You're going to encounter lots of different people along the way, and
Great. Good stuff. Thanks, guys. So
let's
go through it again just quickly. September 15th, 16th, we've got Wiggins fronted, Ian Botham, Beefy's charity foundation bike ride starting in Portsmouth, my hometown. Big respect to Portsmouth. Go to the American Bar if you like your wine. That's a great place. Check it out by the Hard. And then it's going to finish in Lord's Cricket Ground, and you're going to have dinner in the long room for those who are there's different tiers of tickets. You can just rock up and ride for 150 quid with you guys, and then accommodation along the way, I think, is another kind of tier. And then on top of that, the whole shebang, hanging out with you, asking whatever questions you want.
That'll knock it down in price. But no, I think it's great. I thank Bradley for giving up the time to do it. The foundation is really one of the most important things now. Apart from obviously family, but the foundation to keep it going. We've worked so hard to get it to where it is. We might be able to, we might pick and choose a bit more now what we can do, but I want to keep it going if we can. And if you want to come and join us, please do. You can get all the information you need.
We're going to auction off another one of Ian's 81 cricket bats.
Nice. The original.
Yeah. This is another original.
Yeah. It's like Eddie Merck's our record bike, isn't it?
Yeah, there's about 15 of them.
Yeah. Bradley's in the workshop now, just preparing the bat.
Yeah, so just smacking it just in the right way.
Making it look vintage.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you both very much. That's fantastic.
Pleasure.
So Ian Botham and Bradley Wiggins, ladies and gents, as I say, you can support both Ian and Brad in raising money in this September, the 15th and the 16th, for Beefy's Charity Foundation. First time out on a bike, Beefy's Charity Foundation, Bradley Wiggins Cycle Challenge, and that's running from Portsmouth, finishing at Lord's Cricket Ground. As I say, there's a Q&A with the guys on night 1, and there's a sit-down dinner in the Lord's Long Room night 2. And that's not just going to be a great event because they're going to be there. It's going to be a real celebration event as well, because it's the 40th anniversary of Ian's first charity walk from John O'Groats to Land's End, 900 miles. So this is actually a little bit shorter, this ride, but not by much. And it's going to be Ian's 70th birthday this year too. So it means an awful lot to the Botham family. It means an awful lot to the charities they're supporting as well. Blood Cancer UK, Breakthrough Type 1 Diabetes, Yorkshire's Brain Tumour Charity, and the Batten Disease Family Association. So yeah, it's going to be a great event. Few tickets still left, starting at £150 just to turn up. I say just to turn up. Imagine starting out with Ian Botham and Bradley Wiggins, both on there, sitting on their top shoes, waiting to go, and then getting to ride with them and ask them anything you want as you go. It's going to be a wonderful event. They do hope you can join them, and do check it out at beefysfoundation.org, and also links and stuff like that in our show notes. So yeah, check it out. And if you can't ride, you can still support. There's lots of ways to donate to those different charities. Again, we'll have lots of information in the show notes. And that just leaves me to say, again, thank you so much to both Ian and Brad for being such stellar guests. And do keep your eyes peeled, because they will be popping up in Cyclist Magazine as well. And do check this episode out on YouTube if you haven't, or do check out the Cyclist Magazine podcast on YouTube. We do have every episode there and a bunch from our back catalogue too. It's a nice way to, I wouldn't focus too much on my face, but it's a nice way to see these guys in the flesh, because you just get that much more personality, don't you, than just the voice. And also, just a quick little plug from us at Cyclist. We've got the Cyclist Magazine track days coming up, where you can ride loads of different sorts of bikes from all those big brands. A bit like when you go to those car track days and you ride the fancy pants cars you can never afford. Obviously, some of these bikes you can afford. Yeah, some of them are a little bit more expensive, but it means you can throw a leg over, an S-Works Tarmac or a Cannondale Super 6 Lab 71, the best bikes in the world, plus loads of others. We've got best bikes from Giant, the best bikes from Factor, the best bikes from Van Rysel. The list goes on. I won't bore you by trying to pick up the website list and read it off to you. You can do that yourself. Check it out at cyclist.co.uk. We've still got some tickets left for our London event at the Lee Valley, I can't get my words out, at the Lee Valley Velodrome, on the track outside there, closed road circuit. That's on Saturday, which is coming up, Saturday the 17th of May. And then we've got our last track day in the series, because it has been a series, we run them every summer. We've got our last one at the Brownlee track in Leeds, and that's on June the 7th, I think. And there's, lots of tickets available at different sort of like price levels. You can just turn up and ride, or you can pay a bit more and get lunch and coffee thrown in. But whatever you do be assured there'll be tons of great bikes to ride, and also just loads of great people to chat to, because it turns out that if you like bikes, there's a good chance that you like somebody else that likes bikes. That's the best bit about cycling, right? Shared interests. Anyway, do check those out at cyclist.co.uk. Do go to Beefy's Charity Foundation at beefiesfoundation.org. And as I say, do also check us out on YouTube and pick up Cyclist Magazine once in a while, because print is not dead. We are keeping it alive, and my goodness, it does look fantastic. I say that, I'm biased, but every time the magazine drops on my doormat, I just think, damn it, I want to go and ride my bike because it looks so good. So check out Cyclist, and do come back in 2 weeks' time for another episode of the Cyclist Magazine Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and see you soon.